Hi, I'm Mr. Kangas, and today we're going to be taking a look at Chapter 6, Section 7, Finding Percents Mentally. So what that means is we are learning how to find percentages of numbers in our head without having to do any math out by hand or on a calculator. So first thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to start off by showing you how to find percentages mentally, but then we're also going to show you how to estimate certain percentages. So the first thing I would like to start with is just some basic percentages that we should know. For example, if I have the number 30 and I say what is 50% of 30, it's important to know that 50% is 1/2. Okay? So all you're doing is saying what is half of 30, or in other words, what goes into 30 twice. So half of 30 would be 15. And if you didn't know that, you just would divide 30 by 2 to find half of 30. And so half of 30 is 15. Another percentage you're going to want to know. If I want to know 25% of 40, okay, I know 25% is 1/4 or 1/4, okay? So 25% of 40 would be 10. In other words, to find 25%, you would divide by 4, okay? Because 25 goes into 100 4 times. Percentage means out of 100. You have 25 out of 100. 25 goes into it 4 times, so 25% is 1/4 of 100. 10 is 1/4 of 40. 10 goes into 40 4 times. Now, what if you had a number like... we'll get to that in just a second. First, I want to do one more basic percentage, which is 10%. Okay? If you want to find 10% of any number, okay, you have two options. The harder of the two options is you can divide this number by 10. Now, with a number like 50, we should be able to divide it by 10 pretty easily and figure out that the answer is 5. Now, multiplying by 10, we've talked about how, like, for example, if I do like 5.9 times 10, okay, what it does is it moves the decimal. When you multiply by 10, it moves the decimal to the right one space, and so you would get 59 for an answer, because this decimal will move right to the right one place. But when you divide by 10, the opposite happens. Instead of the decimal moving to the right one space, the decimal is going to move back one space to the left. So if you want to find 10% of something, then all you would do for 50, for example, 10% of 50, the decimal, if you don't see a decimal in a number, the decimal's at the end of it. So in this case, 10% of 50, you would move the decimal back one space, and you would get 5.0, or in other words, 5. So this is probably going to be the most important. This is going to be the most important percentage for you to understand, because if you can find 10% of a number, it makes it much easier to find the other percentages. For example, before I jump into that real quick, I also want to talk about, not only do you need to know how to find 10%, which is moving the decimal back one place, but it's also important to understand that if you want to find 5%, okay, 5% is half of 10%. So if I wanted to find 5% of 50, I would find 10% first. I would move that decimal back, get 5.0. Now I know 10% of 50, and I know 5% will be half of that. So half of 5 is 2.5. And so that's how I would find 5%. Now, if I wanted to find 1% of 50, okay, 1% is 10% of 10%, which is an odd thing to think about. But 1 times 10 gets you to 10. So if you want to find 1% of 50, what you would do is you would find 10% of 50 first, which would bring you to the 5. And then you'd want to find 10% of that. So the decimal moves back one more space, and you get 0.50. So 1% would be 0.50 because you find 10% of the 50. All right, and now you're down to 10%, and then 1% would be 10% of that. Okay, 1%, in other words, 0.01 is 10% of 0.10 because it's, if I take this and multiply it by 10, I get 10%. So for some of us, that may not make a whole lot of sense. For others, that's going to click. If this is not making sense to you, raise your hand, let me know. Ask me a question about it. Pause the video and let me know so we can talk about it some more so I can get into a little bit more detail with you. So these are going to be really important things to understand. If you can find 10% of something, and you understand how to also get 5% and 1% of something, you can pretty much find any percentage you want of any number. So, for example, let's go with 13% of 50. Okay? Which is like, for a lot of us, we think 13%, and it makes us go, ooh, I don't want to go there. That's an odd percentage. That's weird. How do I find that? Well, if I can find 10% of 50, so in other words, I'm just going to move that decimal back one space, okay? I know 10% is 5, all right? Then I need 3 more percentages to get up to 13. So if I can figure out what 1% of 50 is, and then add that 3 times or multiply that by 3, then I can come up with the 13%. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to figure out what 1% equals. So I know 1% would be 10% of this. So the decimal would go back one more space, and I would get 0.50. And so I know another 1% would be 0.50. And another 1% would be 0.50. And so total here, we have 13%. So I have 5 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 0.5. Now, if you add up your 3 halves or your 3 0.5s, you get 1.5. So you could, if you wanted to, if you're not good with decimals in your head, you could set it up like this and add it all up. Okay? Decimal goes straight down, and you would end up with 6.5. So 6.5 would be your answer. 6.5 is 13% of 50. So we're doing it in pieces. We're doing it in chunks. But like I said, if you can add this up in your head, great. You can go from right here to here. That's fine. If you need to add it up like this, please do so. Better to be accurate and correct than quick and not correct. I prefer accuracy over speed. So we're going to be using basically this concept of 10, 5, and 1% to obtain the majority of our percentages. We also will use 25 and 50% when applicable. So for example, if I wanted to know 60% of 50, I would first find 50% of it, half of it. Okay, because I know 50% plus 10% gets me to my 60%. So I know 50% of 25 of 50 is 25, and I know 10% of 50 is 5. So I know that 60% must equal the combination of the two, which is 30. Okay? Let's do another one. Let's try to find 87% of 50. Okay? So again, I'm going to start with the half because I know that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to figure out what 50% is. Then I'm going to figure out 30%. Then I'm going to figure out 5%. And then I'll figure out 1% and 1%, because total that makes 87%. So 50% half, which is 25. 30%, if I want to figure this out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 10%, which I know is 5, because 10% moves that decimal back one space. Okay? I'm going to take that 10%, and then I'm going to multiply it by 3, or I'm going to add it 3 times. So if you wanted, instead of writing out 30%, you may want to do 10%, 10%, and 10%, and do the 5, 5, and 5 to figure out that 30% is actually 5 plus 5 plus 5, which is 15. And then 5%, we've discussed, is going to be half of 10%. So if 10% is 5, 5% is half of that, so it's 2.5. 1%, to figure out 1%, we would find out 10% first, and then we take 10% of the 10%, so 10% of the 5, and that would get me 1%. So whenever we find 10% of something, we move the decimal back one space because we're dividing by 10. So to get 1%, I would move that decimal back one space to get 0.5, like we've done previously. And so we get 0.5, and we get 0.5. And at this point, if you needed to do the addition up over here, you could. If you didn't, great. You could do in your head 25 plus 15 is 40, plus 2.5 is 42.5, plus 0.5 is 43, plus 0.5 is 43.5, which would be 87% of 50. But again, if you needed to take these numbers and add them up on your own on the side, because you're not comfortable with doing it in your head, or you're not as accurate as you could be doing it in your head, then by all means, please do. I would much rather you have accurate answers than answers that that are wrong that you've attempted to do in your head. I don't feel that just because you can do something in your head, it makes you a better mathematician. Many mathematicians err on the side of caution, and they would much rather do things out by hand and double check their answers. That's how you get really good at math, is you double check your answers all the time. You're constantly showing your work, and you're organizing it. So keep that in mind. I do understand, though, there are situations where it is not necessary. But that is how you would find the percentage of something mentally in your head. So at this point, I'm going to end this video, and in the next video we're going to talk about how would you estimate a percentage. Sometimes it's a lot more work to find the exact percentage of something, and it's not necessary to have the exact percentage. You just need to know about, like, for example, if you're going and you want to know about how much money am I going to need for this, or how much money I'm going to have to spend, or how much money I need to come up with. You don't need an exact number, but you need to know a ballpark figure. That's when estimation comes in handy. Or the other really good reason to use estimation is to ask yourself, did I do my work correctly? If you can estimate the percentage correctly, if you can make a good estimate of what 87% of 50 is supposed to be, then when you get your answer, when you're actually going for the accurate answer, you'll know if you're in the ballpark. For example, when we did 87% of 50, and we got the exact answer of 43.5. Now, before we got the exact answer, or even after we got the exact answer, if we wanted to know if we were in the ballpark, if we were about correct, then what we would do is we would estimate and hope that our estimation came out to be right somewhere between 40 and 45 to make sure that we got everything correct. But, like, for example, if our estimation came out to be like 30 and we got this for an answer, then we would know that we did something wrong. So estimation can help you know if you got something correct. Ask yourself, does this answer make sense? But tune in for the next video anyway on estimating.